Hello, and welcome to the Psych and Business Podcast, where we highlight the integration of psychology and psychological principles into the world of business and organizations. I'm your host, Dr. Ernest Wayde. Okay, so I have a very, very interesting guest for you today. He's actually a consultant and a former pro drummer who uses psychology and neuroscience to help leaders develop effective behaviors, collaborative, high-performing teams, and a people-driven organization. His name is Grant Upbeat Bosnick. Grant is also an award-winning author, keynote speaker, and the managing director of Your Empowering Solutions, an HR consultancy. Grant has worked with organizations, get this, in 6 different continents, including Asia, where Grant is currently based in Singapore. Grant also has a newly published book called Tailored Approaches to Self-Leadership, a bite-sized approach using psychology and neuroscience. Grant, welcome to the show.
Great. Thank you so much, Ernest. Great to be here.
Grant, I'm really excited to have you on the show because you're such a unique guest. But before we dive into the work, tell us a little bit about your story. How'd you end up doing this work, and how'd you end up over there in Singapore?
Yeah, so I'll tell you a couple of stories about leaders that I have had in the past jobs that I've had. And I've had a leader who once pointed to himself and he said, "This is majority rules." And I had a leader who pointed to all of us. He said, I can do the work of 10 of you. And another leader, get this, he actually said to us, if you guys don't like it, you can answer with your feet. And I thought that, there must be a better way to lead. So I wanted to help myself and others to become better leaders. I'll tell you a story. When I first became a leader, I used to be in the entertainment industry, not just as a pro musician, but also as a producer for events. And I was producing this large event. We had 24 artists involved, musicians, dancers, and visual video projector artists as well. And with a great venue, sponsors, the media coming out. It was probably about 8 months work to do this. And we did the event. It was great. Everybody loved it. The media loved it. The sponsors loved it. And I thought everybody thought this was really successful. And then I find out about a month later, one of my team members and one of the artists involved, he says, "Grant, you're like a bulldozer. You just push through anything and anyone to reach that goal." And I thought, well, I didn't realize people felt that way. So that was another kind of wake-up call for me to say, well, Grant, you need to step up your game to be a better leader. Yes, we do need to hit those goals, and there's nothing wrong with being a driver to hit those goals, but we do need other things that's going to help make everybody feel that they belong there, everybody feels valued. So this is how I kind of got started into helping myself and others become better leaders. Yeah. When I became a consultant and coach. And it's funny because when I became an executive coach, I had met this person in Japan at that point. So I'm originally from Toronto, Canada, and 25 years now I've been out in Asia, 17 in Japan, and the last 8 years based out of Singapore. And I can tell you more about Asia if you're interested in that later as well, too. Yeah. And so when I became an executive coach, I met Aki Sumitomo, who is the former managing director of 3 different companies, completely bicultural, U.S., Japanese, bicultural. And he was looking for a partner to do what eventually we call 2-on-1 executive coaching. But I remember meeting this guy, and it's like he has the best hair, the most pressed suits, just looking really slick, like he owns that space, but in a humble way. And it's a time for me to really see someone who's got this kind of aura around him. You just walk in there and he's somebody important. And then I was introduced to him by a president of a company, and the interview obviously went well. And then he said to me, he said, "Grant, have you ever done executive coaching before?" I said, "No, I've done leadership workshops, but not executive coaching, but I can do this." And he said, "Okay." And then I went home. Immediately, the first thing I did is I Googled executive coaching. It's like, what did I say yes to? So, oh, yeah, okay, I can do that, and been successful doing that. And then got into the keynote speaking space probably about 4 years ago. And the reason was because of COVID, actually, I would say. I kind of mostly did coaching and workshops, but I used to be a pro musician at one point, touring in front of large, sometimes small audiences. But I love the stage. I love the presence on stage. And then 4 years ago, I decided to combine drumming and team and leadership effectiveness together. I've got a registered trademark here for Upbeat, which is combining the science of drumming and team and leadership effectiveness. But for 20 years of my professional life, I hid the fact that I was a drummer because I didn't think it looked professional. So I promoted myself based on my experience and track record and did well, but I hid the fact that I was a drummer. And then COVID brought it out. I remember about 4 years ago at the beginning of the pandemic in early 2020, I read an article about Arvind Krishna, who is the CEO for IBM. And at the time then, when everybody's working from home at IBM, he takes everybody on a tour, a town hall tour of his house. Here's my wife, here's my children, here's my pets, my living room, my garden, and just to show that he's human. And I thought that was a really cool thing to do. So I'm going to put a little bit of myself, my personal self behind me in the camera when everybody's working from home, just to show a bit about myself personally. And I think it's helped me to become more authentic, and it's helped me to really connect better with others. And clients love it too. For me personally, drumming's helped me to lower my stress, have laser focused attention, boost productivity, and have more energy. And I think, well, who in business doesn't want that? So I don't hide it anymore. It's part of the branding. That's why I'm Grant Upbeat Bosnick.
Yeah, I love you. My only guest so far that has a moniker, and so I love that you have Upbeat. I think that's such a cool moniker. Let me ask you about the work that you do, because I know that you do so much, and I want to hear about how you incorporate music, because I know that's one of the things that you do. So tell us about the work that you do and how you incorporate your background, the music, the drumming into that.
Yeah, I kept most of it separate for a long time. So I was doing the consulting and coaching mainly, and then keynote talk, and I got blending the music together at that point from about 4 years ago. But I had kind of kept it separate for a very long time. And then 4 years ago, I brought it together, and not just doing the keynote talks, but then also I do a one-on-one coaching with people. I'm coaching a senior, she's a general manager, so she's the head of Asia Pacific for a large multinational financial services company, which is based out of New York. And I've done a one-on-one with her drumming together, and she said, Grant, this helps me to have laser-focused, clear thinking. And it could be just, the first 5 minutes of our coaching session to do this. And I've done it with larger groups. I've had 400, 500 people in the audience drumming on their tables together with senior leadership offsites.
How does the drumming help in coaching and team development?
So I use it in two ways. So one of them is literally people drumming and what it is actually doing to our brain physically. And then I also use it as a metaphor as well, which I'll share a bit more in a moment. So physically, and if we want to do some drumming later, we can do that as well, too. Because I think that this is like one of the gateways to help people get their brains into flow and help them to have insight. So flow, like we can get so focused in what we're doing that we kind of, everything seems effortless to us. We're like, McKinsey did a study on it. We can, senior leaders will 5x their productivity when they're in flow.
Yeah, when you get in the zone, right? Yeah.
Yeah, when you get in the zone, athletes get there, artists get there, dancers, musicians, and business people can get there too. And there's specific techniques that we can use to get our brains into that. And it's the same techniques we would use to get insight. So I've created drum exercises. So the right and left hemispheres of your brain, they balance at different frequencies. And I've written drum exercises and rhythms for people that are intentionally designed to balance the right and left hemispheres of your brain. And this means you're going to get faster transfer of information, which means you're going to get more aha moments. The weak signals in your brain connect together, and then you get more insight and aha moments. So drumming is a great way to do it. It's not the only way, but there's other ways you can do this. I think it is one of the most effective ways and can do it as a group together. Yeah. So on an individual level, it's getting people's brains to that higher level of thinking. Yeah. And then as a group, like as a team, like the offsite for the senior leaders, for example, we're going to then have more alignment and then therefore more synergy and collaboration. So we're priming their brains to have higher level thinking, like when you talk later about the innovation or the future of the company. And then as a collective, they've got more alignment and synergy. So the discussion just becomes quite a bit deeper, quite a bit much more meaningful for them.
I love this concept of getting leaders to that flow, to that zone, to that peak level performance. I love that you use the drums to help leaders get there. Help us understand, why is it important for leaders to aim for that, right? Because why is it important for leaders and leadership to be functioning at that level?
If we function at a normal level all the time, let's call that a baseline of 100% of our abilities, then we are less productive than when we're in flow. So I quoted a study that McKinsey did on senior leaders in flow, and there's 5X is the productivity. So what that really means is that you can get a full day's work done in flow, and you can take the rest of the week off, and you'll get as much done as your colleagues who are operating at a normal level throughout the entire week. So number one, we get more done.
Yeah.
Number two, it seems effortless for us. It seems so much easier for us to do that here. I actually remember there was a documentary on Netflix about Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? And if you guys are listening out there, if you haven't seen it, check it out. And Arnold, I mean, he's just had such an amazing career, really. But one of the things he talks about in there, he doesn't use the word flow, but he says, I'm so focused on what I need to do, I don't have time to think about how am I feeling today? And what he meant by that is around these kind of negative downward spirals that sometimes we might get ourselves into, where kind of negative self-talk that we've got, and then it just makes our situation worse. There's ways to get the positive self-talk for ourselves, but if we can get ourselves into flow, one of the unintentional benefits of flow is that it, first of all, lowers our cortisol levels, which lowers our stress. And so we are actually mentally healthier as a result of flow. Yeah. Not directly focusing our mental health, and we should be doing that, but indirectly we get the benefits of better mental health because our brains are so focused on what we need to do that there isn't that space in there for that negative self-talk that's going to drive us down.
Yeah.
So that's another amazing side benefit of flow too.
I love that integration of the neuroscience into the work that you do. And I know you integrate psychology and neuroscience. Tell us a little bit about how you got to that point where you're integrating psychology and neuroscience. How'd you come up with that?
So in university, I studied psychology and philosophy. And so I always wanted to understand how we can apply psychology into our work life, and knowing how humans think, feel, and behave, then how we can help leaders to address the natural ways that the people behave and humans behave, and therefore creating greater impact on our teams, creating an environment where people feel that they belong there, creating an environment that's motivating for people internally. And I'll talk a bit later around what we are. I can mention the psychological needs right now at this moment. And this is going to be a tip for people at the end. So we're giving you a tip already earlier. I have to give you more tips later as well too, when Ernest asked me about more tips. So one of the tips I'll give you is, and I write about this in my book here, which is Tailored Approaches to Self-Leadership, a Bite-Sized Approach Using Psychology and Neuroscience. Routledge published this. Marshall Goldsmith, top executive coach in the world, he did the forward for us as well too. And so one of the things I talk about in there is around the psychological needs that we have. And other people in the world have called these different names. So I call them the Acres needs, ACRES. This is an acronym which means the need for autonomy, so that we've got ownership and some sense of decision-making within limits for the work that we do, so some sense of autonomy. We've got the need for competence, which means that we feel valued for the skills, knowledge, and experience that we bring. The need for relatedness, that we've got good relationships with our colleagues and our boss and direct reports. The need for equity, which I use equity in this case, meaning that there's a need for fairness. So fairness in the level playing field that we work in, fairness in decisions and actions that we're taking. And then Acres, the S is sureness, which is around certainty, that we've got some sense of certainty for what's coming next and some level of clarity, if not certainty, about the future. If it's not going to be completely certain, at least some kind of clarity around what the future looks like. And this is a great tool to start with on your self-leadership journey. First of all, thinking about these are two ways you can use, and probably others as well, but two that I'm going to highlight. One is that when we are in peak work experience, we're going to satisfy all of those psychological needs. So, for example, I had one leader that I was working with, and she told a story that she was completely spearheading and the project manager for a major integration project within their company, and she was able to lead the team to do this, using her own thinking, her own skills, feeling good connection with the team. And so she was able to satisfy all of these psychological needs. So when we have a peak experience in work, it's going to help us to satisfy these. So once we understand these psychological needs, we can then start to look for those experiences where we can satisfy them all. That's going to lead us to internal motivation, which is going to drive us forward. And that's going to be obviously beneficial for us and anyone else that we're working with. Now, the other thing we can use this for, and this might be tying in with what maybe a lot of people might be going through now. There's a lot of changes that have happened in the world over the past 4 years. I mean, obviously, the pandemic changed everything for everybody. Hybrid working, people had a little bit more time to reflect on who am I? What do I really want to be focusing on doing? And so we can use this tool to assess the change that we're going through. And, on a basic psychological level, that everything we interpret in the world is either going to be a reward or a threat. Our evolution in our history, when we were living in the forests or in the mountains or the jungles, and we might be killed by some dangerous animal there. So this threat response is more salient than the reward response, right? And so when we go through a change, we also experience the rewards or threats from the change. So we, like, say, work from home, for example, right? So we use these Acres needs. We got a hybrid working environment, people working from home. Then the need for autonomy, which is ownership and decision-making within limits. We might have more of that working from home. We can decide how we set up our day. We got quite a bit more freedom when we work from home, how we want to then schedule our time. That's the reward. Now, on the flip side, the threat of this might be that if we don't have regular interaction with our direct line manager or senior leaders, we may not get enough timely feedback that could help us to grow. So there is the, maybe it's too much autonomy, and when we work from home, we don't quite have that interaction to get feedback to help us grow. And then we can map out on these Acres needs, what are the rewards and what are the threats. And then we can use that then to create strategies that are going to help us to get more of those rewards and help us to minimize or eliminate these threats.
Appreciate what you're saying in terms of the importance of recognizing and appreciating people's psychological needs and how those are really important, how those impact the work that they do. I want to ask about what you've seen in terms of leaders and their psychological needs across the different continents and cultures, because you've worked on 6 different continents. So how has leadership changed or been the same across your work with all the different continents, especially in Asia, because that's kind of where you are?
Yeah, so I've been here in Asia now 25 years, more or less the area I'll probably focus on. Asia, Middle East, Africa is kind of, a lot of multinationals have now merged the African operations with Asia Pacific and Middle East. Go-to-market strategies are more similar. The growth in terms of economic growth across these different countries are the fastest growing economies in the world, and will continue that way. I saw a futurist present about a month and a half ago, and he was just saying in the next 5 years, that's where everything's happening. And it's happening now. And so, first of all, I do still some stuff with North of the Americas as well, too, and Europe. So I think that on a leadership level, based on psychology and neuroscience and how we can effectively lead humans, there are some commonalities across the world. For example, these psychological needs I mentioned, everybody in the world has these. People want to feel valued for the work they do. Everybody across the world wants to feel valued for now, how that is expressed will be different across different places. And even the psychological needs that I mentioned earlier, people have different priorities. Now, for example, in the Americas or in US, where some of your listeners might be listening in from, maybe the need for autonomy is much stronger than, say, the need for relationships. For example, and I'm making that basic comparison across Asia here, where it might be the opposite over here. Maybe the need for relationships is much more important to people here than the need for autonomy. And in fact, the need for autonomy is much, much lower in Asia countries compared to, say, US, for example, here. So there will be differences in where these priorities are. And then as a leader, how are you going to address these? I think another big thing here is that because the U.S. is such a huge economy and a lot of leaders, there could be, domestic leaders focused in on a domestic U.S. market, which obviously is massive and huge. Whereas out here in Asia, and especially, for example, based in Singapore, which is the sort of the center of Southeast Asia. In North Asia, you've got the bigger countries, China, Japan, Korea, for example, which are already mature markets. But across Southeast Asia and India, which is the West Asia, then there's a lot of growth happening out there. There's 48 countries in Asia and 4.6 billion people. So this is by far more than half the world's population. It is a hugely diverse region to lead. So when people think, oh, you lead in Asia, it's not like it's one homogenous group of people. There are 48 countries out here, multiple languages within each of those countries.
Great point. Yeah.
4.6 billion people. It is a really, really diverse market to lead. I mean, I coach and work with senior leaders in foreign multinationals out here, and they could be telling you, oh, there are 18 countries report to me, or 23 countries report to me. So
how do leaders manage that? How do they manage leading such a diverse group of people? It's a multicultural, multinational. How do they manage that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that on one level, we do need to expand our knowledge about like the different religions, the different cultures that people have, maybe even some of the nuances in some language to help build that rapport with them. Now, I don't think it's reasonable for us to know absolutely everything about every culture that exists within the whole region. I think that if we do engage with people that, people like to be listened to.
Yeah.
So let's listen to them. Let them feel that they are acknowledged for the ideas that they're sharing. We all feel that. We all want that. Now, some people may want that publicly. I'd like to then thank Ernest. Like, this is in a big meeting. We got the whole team. I'd like to thank Ernest for those project, that the details that he submitted. The client loved it. Some people want that publicly. Other people are the opposite. And in Asia, you might have the opposite out here for some of these countries here, where people will feel embarrassed if praised in front of others.
Yeah.
Whereas for them, it might be just, a simple text message, Ernest, that was amazing what you did in the meeting. Thank you so much for that. For the way you presented, the client loved it. Some people might just want it as a short little text message, and that's what they're going to thrive on. So understanding that how each of these people function, and this is, just knowing your team members. So I would say that, the skill wouldn't be any different than leading any team, except you've got a wider, diverse range of people, which means there could be more conflicts. It could be more misunderstandings. People have different styles of working, and understanding your team members and then figuring out how everybody can fit into that to feel valued and that they feel that they belong.
Yeah. I mean, Grant, it sounds like your work is so interesting. We could go on. How do people reach you if they want to, continue the conversation, or they want to get a hold of your service? What's a good way to get a hold of you?
So luckily I've got, my own domain. So grantbosnick.com. I'm not only the only Grant Upbeat Bosnick in the world, I'm also the only Grant Bosnick in the world. It's one of those things when you get a Croatian family name and a Scottish first name and mix it together. And so yeah, grantbosnick.com. You can go there. There's videos out there as well too. The other thing I'm going to point people in direction to. So this book here, Tailored Approaches to Self-Leadership, you can basically read it in any order you want, the chapters. There's also a map people can download. It says, follow this map and choose your self-leadership map. Follow the map and choose your own self-leadership adventure. And it opens up into this beautiful illustration here of these different 18 chapters around resilience, change, authenticity, and trust and empathy. And so 18 chapters around there. And there's an assessment that people can take. The assessment's free. It's very simple, probably less than 3 minutes. It'll take to do this. And if you go to selfleadershipassessment.com, and hopefully the links will be in the show notes below. Yeah, so selfleadershipassessment.com. It's very simple assessment. What it'll do is it will, based on what's most relevant to you right now, give you some tips and recommendations for you to develop your self-leadership. And that's completely free. The tips are free. If you want to dive more into it, there's other ways you can do that, and that's up to you. But it'll give you some tips and some and strategies of how you can focus on the areas that are most relevant to you right now. So that's two the other ways you can reach out to find me, grantbosnick.com or on selfleadershipassessment.com.
I love that approach, that sort of create your own adventure sort of mapping. I love that. Grant, what's a tip that you can share with business leaders and organizations? I'd like to have my experts, share something with the audience.
Yeah. Okay. So how about one thing here? So I think that the starting building block for any kind of higher level cognitive functioning, like insight, flow, to be have empathy towards others, be authentic. I think all of this is about how we can control our brain. So I'll show you a couple of tips here for us how we can do this here. One of them is what I call, or I don't call them, they're called PQ reps. I didn't coin that. This was coined by Shirzad Shamin. PQ reps, and what it does is it focuses on mental muscle. So if you can all do it together, put your index finger and your thumb together, and you make circles with them, right? And we can reverse the direction of this here. And he's tested this under MRI scanners and what it does to the brain, and it really helps us to then get much more laser focused attention in the brain. And so what these PQ reps do, that's like positive intelligence quotient reps, just like going to the gym to do physical reps in the gym, you're going to be doing these PQ reps. And then what it does is it helps you have more control of your brain. The other one that I want to show you, and this is why we're going to bring some drums in for us. And everybody at home, if you want to drum, you don't need drums for this. You just you can drum on your table, drum on your lap. If you're on the train, on the MRT, drum on your lap while your neighbors are watching you. I'm going to put the drums up here so we can see these. I don't know, my camera's not quite reaching there. So you can see these drums here then as well too. And this is very simple. What we're doing. It's called 8 on each hand. So we do 8 with the right. I'll just play on one drum to make it easier. 8 on the right hand, 8 on the left. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Left, 2, 3, 4. And we're going to do all of this together. So I'll play with us, Ernest, and all
okay,
of you.
Yeah, I'm doing it. Yeah, I'm doing it on my table here.
1, 2, 3, 4, right, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and left, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right, left, faster, right, left, right, left, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, right, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, left, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, right. All right, that was awesome, Ernest. And see, I've done this with large groups, 400, 500 people doing it. I've done it with offsites and one-on-one coaching. And people say that really help get laser-focused attention. This is the starting point. So I recommend everybody, like that, just 8 on each hand. I usually do it 3 times, slow, fast, slow, fast, slow, fast, so on. And then what this really does is helps prime your brain to then have higher level of thinking. And that's the starting point. That's going to help get your brain into flow, help your brain have more insight and empathy and be more authentic with the relationships you've got.
I love that you bring a different approach to the work with people. I love the incorporation of music and the integration of psychology and neuroscience. And I think that's such a great approach. So thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your expertise with us.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Ernest. It's been my pleasure here. Thank you.
Awesome. And to our listeners, thanks for listening. We hope you've enjoyed this episode, and we hope you will join us again next time.